Did you know that even sending an email can have a carbon footprint? And that really set an alarm bell off for us.
The reality is people there are humans, right? So they're not their formal self and that's it.
I used to think about values and culture, this big load of bullshit phrases and things that startups and companies do.
We're a family, we do everything. No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. And I think nowadays that's even more prominent with new generations coming into the workforce. You're watching the Misfit Founders podcast, a raw conversation about the challenges of building businesses, overcoming hardships, and also feeling out of place. I'm Biro, an exited founder, investor, and advisor who failed quite a few businesses in the past. My mission with Misfit Founders to help at least one founder every single month by unveiling the authentic stories of other founders and providing guidance and support. So I hope you enjoy the podcast today and get useful insights out of it. And if you do join the conversation on our WhatsApp community, where we discuss topics like this one, in this podcast, in group, as well as private sessions. Link in the video description. Also, please subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you get notified when we publish new videos. Thank you for coming all the way from London to do this. I really appreciate this. We've known each other for quite a while. I think 2018 or something like that.
2018, yeah, a few years, Mary, yeah.
And when we met today in person, you're like, I don't feel like I've met you in person before. We did met once in person, but I think I was a lot skinnier back there.
You bulked up.
I bulked up, yes. So thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for coming all the way from London. You have a really interesting story that I want to get into it. We've actually had another conversation about your journey in my previous podcast, which was Startup Corner and stuff. Now, this is a bit of a different vibe in a sense of the conversation. But yeah, thank you for joining me. It would be great to get a quick introduction of who you are and an elevator pitch of your business.
Yeah,
both of them, because now you have two, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Biro. Thanks so much for inviting me along. And yeah, pleasure to come down to Brighton on a beautifully sunny day. So yeah, good to be here. I'm James Gill, and I'm co-founder of a company called GoSquared. We've been running GoSquared since 2006, technically. So it's been a long time. And primarily, GoSquared is an analytics business. We build web analytics software. And recently, last year, we started a new business, which is EcoSend, an email marketing software with a focus on the climate. So happy to unpack that and talk about both as much as you like, Biro.
That's awesome. And are these technically separate businesses? Or are they, is EcoSend part of your business,
so
your original business?
Technically everything's still under the GoSquared
Okay.
name and business. So we have one business. But EcoSend is the first time we've ever really played with having a different brand for our, one of our products. And yeah, EcoSend is increasingly this sort of separate entity that has its own type of customer, its own product. And yeah, the team is still working across both. But yeah, that's the new endeavor and really, really exciting times as well. So.
I want to ask you about that because I told you I'm going to drill in a couple of topics.
There's lots to chat about. So yeah, it's...
Last time we had a conversation when I had you over on the podcast, which is virtual podcast at that point.
Yeah, we didn't have the TV studio set up that we do now.
We didn't have the Netflix series set up. Back then, you only had GoSquared as a brand.
Yeah.
And you had multiple services. It was the support chat, it was the analytics. You had multiple products under the GoSquared umbrella.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically you asking me about multiple brands versus one brand on that call. Because we were running Jigsaw the company, but every single product of ours had their own distinct branding. We had the whole animal zoo, animal origami, animals play on it. And you were quite interested in finding out about the experience with that versus what you've done for basically 14 years, 15 years, which was have GoSquared as the brand and everything operating under that.
Yeah.
And now seeing you launch a second brand, which is EcoSend, how did that come into play? How did you decide I'm gonna bite the bullet and create a second brand?
Yeah, the debate for us of having one brand or multiple brands, sort of the bundling or unbundling kind of strategy, it's played on, I think, our minds. It's definitely played on my mind for many years. Like when we started GoSquared, when we were back at school as co-founders, we sort of GoSquared really started. I mean, I won't bore you with all the details of the very early days, but really the first thing we did as GoSquared was an analytics tool. And the whole idea was that it would be a simpler alternative to Google Analytics and everything in real time. And at that time, we had the company GoSquared, and we had a product that was originally called Live Stats. And so we had Live Stats, and then it eventually morphed into, we've got two brands, so let's combine it into one. Let's just call it GoSquared, be happy with it. And everything built around that GoSquared name. And for many years, that worked great. And I don't know. I don't know if I got bored or if we collectively wanted to just do more. We're, as founders, we're product people. We love building things, and we wanted to build more. And we were hearing customers asking for more things, and we saw other people in the industry building out more things, and saw this emergence of platforms with multiple pieces of functionality. And we felt, well, it's very hard to build multiple brands, so like let's just build under that GoSquared brand. But frankly, after many years of doing that, we realized we were actually muddying the brand of GoSquared, and that the name GoSquared, when you ask sort of 10 people, maybe 10 people in the geeky tech circles that I operate in would have heard of us, but they would give maybe 10 different explanations of what GoSquared is. And that was a realization that took a long time to come to me. And so that led us on a path of, if we were gonna, like, how do we solve that? That's quite a difficult thing. Like, and when you think about it, that's affecting everything, not just whether we feel good about our name, but it affects why people sign up for the tool, and how you onboard them and how you make sure they're successful. And so what we were finding was a lot of people coming into GoSquared for lots of different reasons, as a relatively small team, not being able to satisfy every single need, and essentially having quite a hodgepodge of users and customers that made it very hard really for us to succeed and to thrive. And so we were in search maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago to try and resolve this. And we were realizing that we were seeing a lot of success with our email marketing product, but that almost no one would say GoSquared's an email marketing tool at all. Like, trying to explain that to people was impossible. And so we had all this functionality in the platform that was, we often say like we'd built like about 5 different companies worth of product, but we had really failed to build one company's worth of growth and success. And so we were trying to kind of balance that out. Like, maybe we don't need so much product, but also maybe what would happen if we experimented with almost like one brand to one pitch, one brand to one proposition, and seeing if there were pieces of the platform we could break out and put under separate brands. And we looked at a lot of companies for inspiration for that. I look at the Atlassian folks for doing some amazing work, Adobe, people like that. These heroes as some of the examples who've made that work. And that was kind of partly the driving force to take us to where we are today. Yeah.
Very interesting. I've always been in between these two strategies, and we were talking about in the previous podcast about this, the fact that I see the benefit and the downside of having multiple brands under one organization, especially if you have a smaller, leaner team and you need to spread resources across everything. I also see the benefits and the downsides of having one brand And I think you're right. I think the biggest challenge is vocalizing what is it that you do without
Yeah.
becoming too generic.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you become too generic, then you're not you're not relatable, and you're not you don't have that aha moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And I think for I don't know, I did a lot of soul searching on this, and and you know, there's a lot of things you want to experiment with in the world of startups, and there are a lot of things you can experiment with, and some things that are just very hard to experiment with, and they're kind of a one-way street. I'm not sure if it was totally a one-way street, but to go and try and start a new brand, and to do that, we tried to do it in the most experimental way possible. But I think a fundamental thing is that you as a business owner, like, you think about your business day in, day out, night and day. You know, I sometimes struggle to sleep because I'm thinking so much about weird stuff about the business that no one really should bother thinking about, probably. But the average person on the street, like, doesn't give a damn about your business. They don't give about anything you do, and they have tens of thousands of brands and propositions that they've seen in their heads. And for us, like, we just get to be a tiny part of our users' lives, and any kind of nuance is going to get lost in that chaos. So from my perspective, it's like, we have to make it so drop dead simple and obvious what we are if we want to stand a shot at being successful, and being recognized, and having something that can be referenced to other people. And I think that was a telltale sign, you know, these very casual encounters you have with someone where you sort of tell them this, I work at GoSquared, and then people struggle, you know, people say GoSquared does this and that, or they do this. And when you hear that different names and different things being said, it's like, that's an alarm bell, because it's totally muddying the water of how quickly a great idea or story can spread, and totally does a disservice to all the work the team does on the product and making customers successful. So what I found very exciting with, as we stepped into running and building EcoSend, was we tested out that proposition in a very light and sort of minimal way, really, with a name and a landing page, before we had much of the product or formed, and really as things were evolving. But what we started to see quite quickly was people hear EcoSend and they can explain what it is back to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's an email marketing platform, people get that, but it's got something to do with climate.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially those two concepts, like, that's basically, if you can say that and remember that, we've done at least some part of a good job there. That's so much better than it's this and this and this, and it's kind of like that and mixed with that. And I mean, maybe there's some businesses that can succeed with truly, like, building some sort of proposition there, but I don't know how to do that. So I think for us, it was like simplifying it down so that if we get the luxury of telling someone about what we're doing, they can go and relay that to someone in like 3 or 4 words.
Very true. I'm curious if you've experienced any challenges, because I mean, you do mention that you experience challenges with this, but any examples that you have around this? Because when you've been doing podcasts with EcoSend, but you've had quite a few marketing initiatives for GoSquared prior to that.
Yeah.
Did you do a lot of organic marketing and content, or paid?
Yeah, the majority
For
of for the whole business, like, you know, as I said, we started this when we were kids, and I know, like most kids, we didn't have much money. we certainly, I don't know, like, what led us to think we should start a business when we were at school. But funnily enough, when you're at school, you don't feel like you're rolling around in cash. And even with a bit of money after we sort of started doing things full time, we never made paid marketing a big thing for us.
Mhm.
I always lived and breathed the inbound marketing playbook, the idea that if you can tell a good story, and well, I guess we didn't know. Let me rewind a little bit. We didn't know how to grow GoSquared in the early days, and we built some nice software, and we, in our naive, I don't know, 15, 16, 17-year-old brains, thought if we build this and it's cool, people will come check it out. And like, we were worrying about all these things like, oh my God, what if we build this and we can't handle the demand and the scale? And it's the classic thing where like you think you've come up with a good idea and you worry about all the wrong stuff. And so we put out like a first version, and really no one gave a damn. And we were, and I think most, even today, many entrepreneurs face that. And back then, like, there's hardly anywhere near the kind of competition and number of startups being created on a daily basis as there are today. But I think we just started to do whatever we had as a mean, like, at our disposal as a way to grow. And one of the things we did basically from day one was start a blog, and we started writing about what we were doing. And that was almost like a very therapeutic thing for us to do. We were like, we've made some new features. Here they are. We solved an engineering challenge as like doing this, and here's why we designed it this way. And that started to naturally attract other people that were quite interested in product decisions and software and building software online. And we were very influenced and inspired by the 37 Signals people. And I remember reading their book, Getting Real, at the time, which was like a very short book, but I think still as relevant today as ever, about building a B2B SaaS business that sells to small, medium businesses. But a lot of the stuff they talked about in there just made total sense to me, and that like, we can write, we can draw, we can create, and let's just try putting some stuff out there. And day by day, post by post, resource by resource, we gave people enough reasons to come to the site, and we started getting linked to from other sites. We started building up a bit of a reputation on in terms of Google, and so then it started to be that we'd put stuff out. We started showing up in some search results, and gradually we found we were getting organic traffic to the site. And I think, and we then used Twitter as well quite a bit, just posting, not as a brand, but like just posting interesting stuff that we thought was helpful to other people that were building websites and building web businesses. And that really, for the first few years of growing GoSquared, was really basically all we did. And I think we've always just believed that some of the best marketing is not really, we don't really think about it as marketing. It's just like, be helpful, be educational, be inspirational, and that attracts people. And we've spent money on paid, and there are a lot of people that are very good at paid out there. In our space, there are such huge budgets for, whether it's in the analytics space or the email marketing space, very hard for us to compete on those budgets. So we have to outthink that in a way, and find creative ways to get people to us. And yeah, that's been the bedrock of like how we've grown the business.
Very hard to compete with companies that have tens and hundreds of millions investment, and they throw money in advertising, isn't it?
It's yeah, absolutely. And it's a bit of a, in the analytics space, we were competing with Google to buy ads for Google Analytics
in the early days
on Google.
Yeah.
and in the email marketing space, you've got numerous billion-dollar companies that it's just pocket change for them to outcompete us on PPC. So, but like the wonderful thing is the market over time has only grown. There's more and more people looking for both analytics tools and email marketing tools, and there's more and more niche businesses in both spaces, and there's more and more users and customers in different verticals that are looking for tools that meet their needs better than generic providers. And so that's been a big opportunity for us, really. And yeah, for us, I just tend to think for us, it's like if we're going straight to like, how can we outbid MailChimp or whatever on Google Ads, like we're just being lazy with our thinking. And really the opportunity is to build a brand that people believe in, to build a reputation, to build customers that are loyal to us, not just for a set of features, but the values we hold as a company. And I think more so than ever with what we're doing with EcoSend, which is both a software as a service offering, but also has these deeply entrenched climate values and this greater purpose. We have a real opportunity to build not just a customer base, but like a real following around that. And that's what's exciting at the moment, seeing how passionate people get about what we're doing there.
So if I were to put a bit in perspective, your approach to generating audience, generating interest, and attachment to what you do in the early days with GoSquared, is it fair to say that where your organic reach and your ability to grow the company from a user-based perspective has been in the fact that you build a reputable blog with a lot of good, great content and helping as much as possible, and that attracted a lot of your audience, that some of it became leads and that converted into sales, and people started talking about GoSquared because it was a reliable source of information?
I think it was a combination. As with all things, there was never like a silver bullet that got us to any kind of growth. But I think with GoSquared and with the analytics product, fundamentally, as the famous Y Combinator saying is, like, we built something people wanted. And at the time, rewinding to like, 2008, 2009, 2010, there were like, you look at what a website owner needed to do to understand their website traffic back then, and it was like you can install a hit logging tool on your server if you know how to do that and who knows how to do that, and you get some like black and white graphs that are like a spreadsheet that update daily with hits, and you look at that and you think, like, we can do better than that. And then you look at what was coming onto the scene was modern tools like Google Analytics. They'd built a pretty advanced tool called Urchin and were bringing that in. But still, like, that at the time, I mean, a lot of people maybe watching this won't even remember the days where like you had Adobe Flash or Macromedia Flash on the web, and you couldn't do graphs in like JavaScript, so you had to flash charts, and then when the iPhone came along, like, they don't load on an iPhone, and so like that was, and Google Analytics was never, even still to this day, it's not really properly real time, and does lots of stuff with sampling data and has like all the bells and whistles if you're like a media conglomerate. But like, if you're building a small website for a small business, you don't need most of that stuff. And so like we built the analytics product very much as the tool we wanted, and that seemingly was what a lot of other people wanted too. And so at the heart of it, like, that was, I think, critical, because
Right.
even if we had a good blog and lots of good content, people could sign up and then just turn around and leave. But we built something people signed up for and installed and used and paid for, and then told other people about. And I think the kind of fueling that fire was a lot of those content efforts. And building, I think a lot of people always want shortcuts, or they want to sort of outsource the growth stuff to other people. And I think we really wore our content on our sleeves. Like, every single one of the team, like, we didn't have like a content writer. We were writing stuff ourselves. We'd solve an engineering challenge and write in depth about why it happened and how we solved it. It's really geeky content, and a lot of that content probably not optimally targeted at the ideal user we would want. But we were like, we can spend a lot of time deliberating whether or not it's the right thing, or just write it. And
Yeah.
some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. And I think on the whole, like, and I talk to people a lot about this with the content marketing, because it's like everyone wants to see the ROI of everything they do, and everyone wants to know that, like, that blog post we wrote, was it worth it? Should we do that again? But I think you have to look at those efforts on a far longer timescale than one post, or even really like 6 months of blogging. You know, there's some things you're going to learn, but the compounding effects of doing it over, for us, well, now many years, is like the reputation, the leads generated, but also the ranking, the domain reputation, the ability now for us to write something and it ranks pretty much straight away. Like, all of those things don't come by accident and don't come overnight. And you could at any point along that journey say it's not worth it. There's no point. But, you know, maybe we're just naive, but we just had a bit of a belief that some of that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to discredit the product that you do. You guys are product people, 100%, right?
Maybe to a fault sometimes, but yeah.
you the product people and nerds, right?
We're nerds. We're self-confessed nerds.
Yeah, like sure. that you know, that's Nikki and I as well. So you build something of value. You build something that you wanted to use and others wanted to use versus what was on the market, and you know, word to mouth, and those people became advocates and loyal customers and brought others and so on. So that was quite a powerful network word to mouth effect as well. The reason why I focused on is the reason why I wanted, so my initial point was I wanted to make a bit of a distinction between GoSquared and EcoSend, where sure. GoSquared from a marketing perspective was focused on content and the blog and bringing audience. And yeah, sure, it's not an overnight thing. You build it over years and years, yeah. And we know that as well. Like the first year of Jigsaw's blog was nothing. Whereas with EcoSend, apart from that, you're also focusing on a very strong mission proposition around you know, climate, sustainability, and so on. So you're also bringing basically backing from your audience and you know, and friends and network from that perspective, because you have a mission that resonates with a lot of people. So it feels like that's, and the reason why, so it feels a bit that that's the contrast between what you're doing with GoSquared in the early days and so on versus now with EcoSend.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I focused on the marketing, I have absolutely no doubt that your products are awesome, right? In terms of the value that they bring.
You're a very trusting man, Mira.
But, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, because you've been, what is it, 15, 16, what is it now, years?
Yeah,
in the SaaS world.
I think it's good 16, 17. It depends where you start counting from, but yeah, it's too many.
So when you talk about your early days and the fact that you build a analytics platform, and there was spreadsheets and there was database tables, and then Google Analytics came with their Flash stuff and so on. You're talking about a period in SaaS and service world that was completely different than what we're experiencing today.
Absolutely.
Where we're experiencing a significant flood of solutions and microservices, micro SaaS, the way it's called today, and very specific solutions for very specific problems. And there's a wealth of these kind of solutions.
Yeah.
And to me, nowadays, if you can focus and do marketing right, you're ahead. Because we live in this world where you can find absolutely everything. Not only that you can find absolutely everything, people are educated, consumers are educated to search and find the thing that they envision
Yeah.
and that they want exactly how they want to, because they have so much selection in terms of, problem solving tools.
Yeah.
Whereas 15 years ago, the landscape was completely different, where,
Seriously.
you build something that a lot of people wanted,
Yeah.
but there wasn't that much that many solutions out there that were doing the same thing. Everything
Yeah.
was clunky, everything. So one, I want to hear from you, how did you experience this landscape change over the years? And two, maybe a bit about EcoSend, and how did you got to this point where you realize, I want to help, I want to contribute to this planet, and
Sure.
this is how I'm going to do it.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to discuss there, Biro. I think it's a really good point. I think first on your point around how things have changed, and I couldn't agree more. Like, the world we live in today, on the web, you are overwhelmed, especially for anyone that is, checks out sites like Product Hunt and things like that. That it is absolutely overwhelming, the number of propositions and solutions and options there are for every single tiny use case you can even think of. Um and I think sometimes it's easy to sort of reflect and look at, say, 2010, 11, 12 or whatever, and think, oh, it was easy back then. Like, look at how much, if you just did the right thing back then, you'd be well on your way. But
I don't think that's the case.
yeah, well, exactly. And I think, I
There are
look
different
back at,
problems for different.
exactly, they were different problems at different situations. And I look back at those days. I look back at when we were starting GoSquared, and the days of supporting browsers like Internet Explorer 6, and you couldn't do rounded corners, and you'd look at something on apple.com and think, how do we do that? And you realize, like, they've got probably like 20 people working on this page, and you've got like two of you in a shed trying to figure out how you have the same kind of standards, and trying to support different browsers alone was hard. But also things like just building a software as a service business, it was hard to accept payments. PayPal was maybe in its infancy, and I remember we had to sign up for like a credit card terminal thing, and we had to have a separate one for the US and the UK, and a separate one for supporting Amex. And we used to get like paper statements through the door at the office like every day for every transaction we had, and we had like a mountain of envelopes in the office just for like taking payments back then, like before Stripe came along. And you look at all of these things, and every part of running a software as a service business, there's so much more scaffolding and foundation stuff now that means you don't have to worry about all those layers, which means obviously you can hit the ground running faster. And it means therefore that, if given there's more people wanting to be in SaaS and it's faster to get into SaaS, there's obviously going to be more solutions and more options out there.
Yeah.
And I think though, and I think we thought about this a lot over the last few years, with some of our thoughts around unbundling our platform, and the early days of EcoSend, of how do we build something that people are even going to notice or care about in the market? Like, there are literally hundreds of email marketing providers and solutions out there. Some of them, as we discussed, have very big budgets. And we knew that we already had an email marketing product, but that no one knew about it, really, in the scheme of things. No one cared about it. And a big focus for us was to try to find a way to get people to give a damn about us, and to differentiate in the market. And we had this, we talk internally a lot about the issues we have and the problems we have, and we try to surface them as quickly as we can, because as a team, we're all optimists, and we're all like very focused on the positives all the time. It's part of why we've stuck together and stayed in business for so long with so much positive energy. But we're also always trying to be very self-critical and try and find those problems that desperately need to be solved, and try to prioritize the biggest problems. And for us, one of our biggest problems for a while was essentially, well, one, making sure people understood our proposition, which has led to some of that breaking things apart.
Yeah.
And then differentiation, like, okay, you break the platform apart so that people can understand it, but then just because someone can understand you are an email marketing product or you are a web analytics product, so what?
Doesn't make you special,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
it doesn't make you special. Like,
what's the angle? What's the
yeah. And so we spent a long time trying to figure out, like, you said an angle there, but like a proposition that people could care about. And we tried various things out. We had a whole other brand for a while that was primarily feature driven about our segmentation and automation features, and there were pros and cons to that. EcoSend came about because, well, EcoSend came about from a very different perspective, and a very different perspective to what drove originally like the GoSquared days. And you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but we were very much product focused. It was a product we built with GoSquared, and we built something for our own needs. With EcoSend, it was very much, while we had some shape of a product, which was an odd place to be starting something from with already having a product, but the brand and the whole thing really started from a perspective of the proposition and a different market and a purpose that was really born out of kind of, we stumbled into it really. And it was around like summer last year, and we were all together in London for like a little day together because we work remotely, and we got together, and one of the team found some research about the carbon footprint of digital activities. And we all thought, we'd try to be a good company. We try to be a company that cares for our users, our customers, for our team. I always like to think of ourselves as building a company like that I would want to work at.
Were you doing, sorry to make a bit of a parenthesis here,
Yeah,
were you part of any initiatives for sustainability, any like 1% plant trees, anything like that with
with GoSquared.
GoSquared before that?
We had done a few things. So I, as a founder, I'd signed up for Founders Pledge, which is a cause that encourages founders to essentially commit to donating some of their money to high impact causes when they exit. And that had been something I'd done early on in GoSquared days. And we also signed up for I think it's Pledge 1%, which I think was one of the sales or related to Salesforce, and came about.
Atlassian does it as well. Appfire does it as well. Our company.
Yeah. And so like those things, but those things are sort of, they were not front and center of our minds. And I think the thing that really, but we'd always tried to build a good company. Like our ethos has always been to, do what's right for our customers, and try to, we don't, clearly having been in business for all this time, we're not here to make a quick buck. We're not here for growth at all costs. We're here to build a good lasting company, a sustainable business, one that hopefully can set a good example for others as well, is ideally the case. And we've almost been at times tried to be the antithesis of a typical VC-backed San Francisco unicorn, because of some of the decisions we made. But I think with EcoSend, well, rewinding back to last summer, it was one of the hottest days on record in London, and we were all together in London. And I think there's just a bunch of media pieces around climate coming up, and one of the teams stumbled upon a piece talking about the carbon footprint of digital activities. And we didn't really think about this at all before. And we sort of thought, well, we don't really have a carbon footprint. We work remotely. What we make is software. We don't really, we don't have a factory. We don't have a fleet of trucks driving around. But in this piece, it was sort of surfacing that everything we do online at the end of the
Oh, yeah.
day is computers running in a big data center somewhere. Those computers need to be built and shipped and distributed. Those computers need to be plugged in. They need to consume energy. They need to be cooled. And look at the internet, it's only growing, and data center consumption and use is only growing it's growing at a faster rate than ever. And so we started looking at that, and then there was more info. The more we dug on this, it's like, oh, did you know that even sending an email can have a carbon footprint? And did you know it can be multiple grams of CO2 from a single email based on XYZ calculations? And that really set an alarm bell off for us, because we thinking of ourselves as these good people and doing a good thing, and here we are building a product that's helping customers send hundreds of millions of emails a month, and we were totally blindsided by it. And so we dug into it, and we were like, that can't be right, can it? That really can't be right. We were so almost like, that surely isn't the case. And the more we dug, the more we couldn't find something to prove otherwise. Like we couldn't find anything to say that this is not a problem, and almost a lack of research into this, and a lack of people really talking about it. But we the more we dug, the more we found a few people. And I think since that time last summer, we've only seen this like tremendous growth in the number of people caring about really the broader topic of digital sustainability, and wanted to do something about it, whether it's like improving how websites are run, and like thinking about every single page view on the web, and how that is consuming energy on so many levels. And for us, it became this thing we just couldn't get out of our heads, and so we eventually ended up evolving what our email platform was under GoSquared into not something that was primarily feature based or product based, but something that was purpose driven, and that became EcoSend. And our whole purpose now, mission with EcoSend, quite plain and simply, is to eliminate the carbon footprint of email marketing. And that is quite a simple message, but it's a mission that has aligned us all and helped set our priorities for where we go this year and over the next 5-10 years of what we're doing.
Did that change your mindset and attitude as a founder and CEO?
It's changed my attitude as a founder, a manager, a product builder, marketer, as an individual, as a human. Actually, I think I've always cared about the planet I live on, but every year I get older, and I think the more I've been going down this path, and we talk about marketing efforts, we talk about doing a podcast and things like that. With the EcoSend podcast that we run, was never started as a marketing effort. It was started as this thing for us to have conversations with people that knew more about climate sustainability than I did and than we did. And so those conversations were initially conversations we didn't record. And then we were like, well, actually, we're learning so much from these. This is pretty insightful information. Like we're getting so much from this, but hardly anyone's talking about this stuff. Like, let's try and maybe see if some of these people will be willing to go on record and like talk to them. And that's what, and that in some ways is where things do start to come full circle, because I feel that's not content we're farming out to someone and like get some GPT thing to write some content, get an AI to read it out, and
views.
We're having these really deep and meaningful conversations on the podcast that we're genuinely learning every single episode about how to run a better business, how to build a business to balance profitability and being good and being purpose driven and giving something back. And more people are coming on board with that too. And so for us, it's just like, we couldn't imagine going back to a world where we didn't think about digital sustainability, but also the wider topics of like, what is the opportunity and purpose of running a business, and what are the things we can be doing beyond thinking about revenue and costs to make each business, no matter whether you're a one-person business or a million-person business, like what are the things you can be doing to to care about community and the planet and those around you as well as your own shareholders.
It's so funny because I've done both. I don't know if you've done both, but I've done both. I created content for the purpose of lead magnets,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I've also created content just because I was like, this seems very useful. Other people could definitely benefit from
Yeah.
this. And when you were talking about having private conversations about with probably some customers of yours
Yeah.
and leads and so on about their businesses and how they help the environment and the planet, and decided, wait a minute, this is really good stuff that other people should know and get educated
Yeah.
about. Like I had the exact same aha moment with Nikki actually, and she helped me with that because I was having conversations with founders and mentoring a couple of founders here and there. And I had so many people that wanted advice on certain things because with Jigsaw, we had a very, polarizing presence out there, and we were always on everyone's timelines and so on. And everyone was like, dude, I need to chat with you. I don't know what to do about marketing. I don't know what to do about this growth. You guys grew your business and so on. I need some help. So I'll go through these calls and we would talk about so many amazing topics. And Nikki once told me, there's so much value in these conversations that you probably should do a podcast or something and have these conversations more open publicly rather than behind closed doors and in private calls, because there's a lot of value that others could benefit from. And I think when you do that, I think that's where people relate the most and find that content most valuable, because you're not doing it with the intent of selling, of siphoning those views into a funnel to sell and so on.
Yeah.
You don't have an alternate reason. You're as pure as you can be and as yourself as you can be in that piece of content. And I was actually talking to someone today, giving them advice around building a podcast. And I said, be your authentic self, show your character, your charisma, your personality, whatnot, because that's what people relate to. And nowadays, that's what people relate to anywhere you go. It doesn't matter if you're on LinkedIn, which was about maybe 10 years ago was this professional, very formal platform. Now, the reality is people there are humans, right? So they're not their formal self and that's it. You can't detach the person from the professional person, right? The professional self. So content that you put online, if you deliver that with authenticity and charisma and so on, people will relate to that and will get attached to it, and they want to see more, they want to learn more and so on. So I think that's very important, because most of the things that I've started in the past, that I started from a pure need to help others, have been the things that worked the most.
Absolutely. And I think there's like sort of two angles I come at this from, of like, on the one hand, in terms of as a business thinking about content and what should be shared, I in the early days, I've always been a big fan of Apple, and I've always loved, I've always been fascinated by their approach to secrecy, and how they don't tell anyone about anything. They work on a product for 5 years and no one knows anything about it, and then suddenly you reveal it and it's this magical thing that no one was expecting, and it's this pristine, and you don't need to know all the hard work that went into it. And in my early days, I used to think that was a great way to do marketing, and really, really cool. Just really cool. If we can do that, like, that's aspirational. That would be amazing. Over time, I think I've actually shifted to thinking, okay, that works for Apple, but actually for us, we found that so much success in terms of, and I think individually as well, I've noticed this a lot. There are things I'm always I like that I might be designing or one of the team might be building and developing, and we're often naturally worried about sharing it because it's not ready yet. What if someone sees it and copies it? I'm a bit embarrassed by this right now. But those times where you break from that and think, screw it, like, let's just chuck it out there. Almost every time I've ever done that, at least, it's been a really interesting exercise because people feed back to you about stuff that's in progress and help shape it to be better. And
Building
it's,
public
yeah, building public is a
movement
whole
that's
movement,
happening
isn't
now.
it? And but I know some people can take that really, really to an extreme, but I think I know just from my experience that I've often really feared that because you fear what people will think. And every time I've done it, though, it's been incredibly rewarding and helped shape something for the better. And I think often there's so much stuff we even share internally as a team that would actually be valuable to share externally. And hopefully we can do that more and more. Like doing the podcast is one thing, but there's so, when you think about even a small team, you got 5, 10 people, like the number of decisions that get made on a daily basis, the amount of work being done on a daily basis, and only like a tiny piece of that, and maybe the final output of it gets shared, but there's so much to learn from all the other stuff in there. So that's one thing. But then I also think about the output and what a customer wants, or what a possible, like a prospect or a lead might want. And I think that's a whole other side, because like there's an area of like sharing content that's more valuable for you as a creator to get better, but then there's also making maximally useful, valuable content. And I think going back to some of your points about like things that people want to consume online and the human side of things, I guess it's so cheap and easy now to create mediocre content that's why you're seeing so much more from humans and giving a more thoughtful and heartfelt take on things, and maybe more honest take on things, because that is what can stand out. But I think it's important to think as a marketer, especially, to always be thinking about what's going to be valuable for the consumer. And it's really obvious to say that, and I feel almost silly saying that, but the number of times you read posts where someone's written it because they're trying to hit a keyword goal, or they're trying to optimize for ranking in Google, they're not writing it to be a useful resource for another human to consume or use. And I think about that, whether that's content actually or in a product and in an interface. It's like so many decisions, they don't get made by thinking about what the user or the consumer or the customer wants. They get made for other weird reasons, like my boss told me to, or strategically Q4 goal is to do this, so that's why it came about. And it's like the most obvious simple advice, but it's unbelievable how much that advice is not followed by so many people on the web. So it's something I think about a lot.
Yeah, I've encountered that a lot. I think there needs to be a balance between satisfying the numbers and creating really valuable and meaningful content. Because at the end of the day, I think us as organizations, as companies, as teams have as much of a responsibility to educate and create meaningful information and start meaningful conversations out there as a influencer that's really passionate about that topic. Right? Like it's one way to give back to the communities that you're serving with your products, and that become your customers and that allow you to thrive in a certain industry and so on. It is a very important part of it, and there needs to be more balance in organizations, which most of the time there's none, because a founder here looks at marketing as a way to sell purely. So it's all about the fast ROI numbers and how do we get as much squeeze, as much revenue out of this and this initiative. So much so that the entire structure in that marketing team is funneled into initiatives that return the most revenue. And yeah, those can be, SEO driven, CPC driven type of initiatives that aren't written for humans but are there to capture as much of your time to put you through a funnel in a sense, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to something because this is something that a lot of teams struggle with. When we talk about, because I just mentioned giving back and so on, and you talked about this, that you want to share more from internal. There's so many decisions, there's so many inflection points and activities that you do inside your organization while developing a product. So many things that you could share more in order to allow others to understand on, what it takes to build the product, how to build the product, how this, right? So, and I think that's absolutely valid and true, because the amount of interesting stuff that we do internally, and sometimes I look at it from with a content creator's eye, and I'm like, man, if we could capture a lot of these conversations and workshops and outcomes and just share it out there, the world would be a better place, right? Because we contributed a lot of it. Going back to what I wanted to mention, that's awesome, but a lot of companies struggle in balancing, doing the deed and talking about the deed, right? If you know what I mean. So, because you have a limited amount of time that you can spend to build a product, to sell it, to grow as an organization. And how do you split that and make time and invest energy from you and your team into doing this stuff and putting more content out there? How do you manage that? Because I see this in a lot of organizations, that employees, team members, heads of, founders say, I would love to be able to put more stuff out there, but I don't have time.
Yeah. It's a great question, and I don't necessarily have any solid answers on that, but it's certainly a topic that I am thinking.
I don't think anyone has solid answers to anything in this world, but that's why we're having conversations.
Totally. It's a fascinating topic though to unpack a bit, because doing the work versus sharing the work is always kind of a conflict. I mean, this might be zooming out a little bit too much, but I think about what we're doing with GoSquared, with EcoSend, what I am doing, what we are doing as a team and as founders, and I think about like what success looks like. And for a long time, I viewed success as being a big financial outcome, and how big the team is, and how, really like measuring it on how many articles in TechCrunch you get and things like that. And I used to look up to these, like,
that's very common. Every single founder has been and done that, and a lot of them still do.
And you see, and I think on the whole, like, society seems to pay a lot more attention to those financial success stories, almost as if that is the beacon of success for many people. And maybe there's a few examples of that changing now, but for me, I've been on a bit of a journey to sort of understand what success looks like from my perspective. And I won't lie, like, financial, a financial outcome or good finances is definitely
financial well-being, right? That's important.
Part of things. But I think there's a whole other side to things that doesn't get anywhere near enough the attention that it deserves. And that is really enjoying your life and enjoying what you do on a daily basis, and factoring that in and finding that right balance between, you're always going to be doing some stuff here and there that you don't necessarily like wake up out of bed super excited to do. But like on the whole, do you enjoy what you're doing every day, every week? And how does that fit into the lifestyle you want to lead? And yeah, financially, how are you doing? But also, you know, do you have time to see your family and your friends and I don't know, eat the food you want to eat and things like that. And I think there's this whole patchwork of other stuff that to me like it comes down to like, for me, my definition of success is probably very different to 20 other founders that you might meet, and everyone's got a different type of success. So I think for a start, I kind of start there because I think like that is such a big part, and then in forming the kind of company you want to build and the way you run a company and the outcomes of that company. But I think it does play into some of that story on the long, loose, windy road back to your questions around
the meaning of universe
and stuff, because it's like I think when I look at it through that lens, it gives you almost permission to say there are some things we're going to do in the business which are not about growth. They're not about trying to win leads or win customers. And someone might look at that and say that's really stupid, because like, why are you not spending that time winning business and seeing that financial outcome or XYZ? But for me, it comes down to enjoying the work, enjoying the day, and wanting to build a company that I enjoy being at. I enjoy working with the people I'm around, and that those people as well enjoy the work, and that they're not so much that everyone gets to do whatever the hell they want and and rock up whenever they want and play around with whatever they want. No, but finding people that are really driven, really love to work their socks off, but also are smart enough to know that a day can be spent in a lot of different ways to be impactful. And I think often finding people that love to create and love to build, and knowing that can be a very versatile set of skills and that you can actually apply them in different ways. And I think with the podcast, it was certainly mostly driven by that desire to learn more, and for us to not feel like idiots going into a world we didn't really understand too well. But we also were like, yeah, let's see what happens. Like if we can get people to tune into that, to listen to that, no doubt that could be a great way to engage people with the brand and to build a brand. And I think marketing as a whole is this discipline that's so complex and so wide-ranging that so much of marketing cannot be measured. And I'm saying that as someone who's worked on an analytics product for so long. But, you know, I think it's a very immature thing to say that we're only going to do the marketing activities that we can provably see an ROI on, because I mean, there's that age-old quote of like, half of my marketing's working, I just don't know which half. and you know, if you stop doing the stuff that you can't see the ROI on, you're probably going to have terrible marketing. Like, do you think the biggest brands in the world like have specific down to the person metrics on every brand campaign they've ever done? Like, I think with something like what we're doing with EcoSend, there is a huge element of building a brand that is a long-term endeavor, and things like the podcast contribute to that. Things like sharing our knowledge contribute to that. And there are other things we're doing which are very attributable here and now to the day, like spending money on a LinkedIn campaign, or putting a lead form on your site that is covering your homepage. Like, these things can be measured. But I definitely subscribe to this idea that every single interaction we have with another person, that anyone on our team has with another person, that any person has with any tiny element of EcoSend or GoSquared, that is part of our marketing. And that is part of essentially the trust, this concept I came across a while ago from the Shopify founder, this sort of like trust battery, where, you know, I think of that as like our marketing. Like, you're either charging up that trust battery or you're depleting it, much like the the setup you have here, all running on batteries that may be depleting as I rabbit on. But
Yeah. We'll get a cue when to close off, when they start to turning off.
but that concept makes so much sense to me, because when we think about marketing our businesses, we think about it as this marketer, but it's like, put yourself in the shoes of yourself going to the shops or interacting with another brand, and you can feel really great about a brand, and then they do something stupid that pisses you off and it depletes it. And you just have to think like that and try to keep applying that to your own business, where, we think about that a lot. Like, yes, we can capture leads or do things that might return a quicker ROI, but sometimes those things actually do more damage than that, and erode that trust. And at the end of the day, we want smart customers. We want customers that care. We want customers that are passionate. We want really, really great people coming on board and using us and telling others. And we're not going to do that by tricking them and bamboozling them. Like, we're going to do that by earning their trust. And that happens whether you're wearing the marketing hat, the customer success hat, the product hat, the leader hat, the support staff hat, like all of those areas. And so yeah, for me, marketing and that work, it's not you don't justify it with an ROI number. You kind of have to do it with sheer belief. And if you're in a culture or a team where that belief is kind of poo-pooed, then maybe change the culture or get out.
I love what you said, the analogy around brand trust as a battery of energy that it can get depleted, and you have to constantly recharge it and keep your brand seen as a trusted one. I also, and these are really good reasons and motives to allocate the time to do these meaningful and give back type of initiatives. But I also loved what you said earlier, which is, it's kind of just drawn from your own values as a founder. And I've talked about this in the past as well. If you don't have it in your ethos if you don't have some of these values that convey, creating trust, that convey helping others, giving back, and so on, your company will never adopt that as a goal, as a mission. And fundamentally, the reason why we were able to split our time between ROI activities and educating and giving back was because it was part of our values, and it was prioritized as a mission goal.
Right.
So we had in our goals, so our mission was to make work management easy, fun, and accessible to everyone. Sure. And the way we achieved that is through tooling, the tools that we had, and through education. So education was something that we were tracking as a goal that everyone was accountable towards in our organization. And I think if more companies do this and say, well, it's me, James, I founded this company and I have these values, and I want these values to echo through everything that I do in my personal and professional life. So my company will echo these values. And I want, to hire people that resonate with these values. And I want those people to feel accountable towards these. I think then you're going to have a frictionless approach to giving back as an organization. At least that's my 2 cents. That's what I've been experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's again another really interesting topic around values and culture and things. And I have to admit, for many years of running GoSquared, honestly, I'm slightly ashamed to admit it, maybe, but like
That's
for
why
a
you're here.
long
This is
time.
Misfit Founders.
Yeah.
Open up.
But
Open up.
I used to think about values and culture kind of with a lot of skepticism. I used to kind of think there's this big load of bullshit phrases and things that startups and companies do, and values and talking about culture are like often very much associated with that. Um I think I maybe was naive or misplaced the importance on that, but we started GoSquared at such an early age. We didn't really set out thinking about building a business. We didn't have this big formal start, and we sort of iterated into it, building a thing and seeing it grow very organically. But as time went on, we started trying to form values, and every now and again we did one of these cheesy exercises where we would try and come together and put a load of words on a board. And we tried it a few times and it failed. And I think there were maybe several factors at play there, and maybe some of the challenges were that we were doing that almost too late, and that we were trying to retroactively fit values to a hodgepodge of ideas and team and stuff, and we had some really tough times with that. And it was very clear at times we had people on the team that were not aligned, and when you were in that situation, everything becomes hard because you can't really lead. Well, it's very hard to lead when people are, you can disagree on certain decisions, but when you disagree on some fundamentals, or if those fundamental guiding principles are not clear, then it makes everything difficult and it slows everything down. And then it almost gets to a point where like having a team is almost a detractor, and makes it more difficult than if it's just, when you're on your own, like you kind of know a lot of things in your own mind and can be quite clear with yourself. But when you got like 10 people and you got like 3 of them are not quite aligned on those values and no one's really clear on the purpose, and then that does become hard because people make it up for themselves, and even then the people that think they know don't quite know. And it genuinely having a team at that point is dangerous, I think. And if you throw into the mix there like a lack of growth, then fingers get pointed, and everything, even though you might be doing like 80% of things right, everything gets questioned. Whereas I think with the point we're at today is a team that is very aligned on what's important, and we have a set of values that places various things higher on the agenda, like the planet, like giving back, having good community, and product quality, and these areas that we almost haven't needed to do a cheesy exercise on value definitions because they've become very apparent through the work we're doing and have bubbled up to the top. But I think for me personally, I've found tremendous value in getting clear on my own values. And again, I was very skeptical of doing that. But since getting clearer, for me, it's made me a lot happier and a lot more comfortable in my own skin. And it's helped me with setting goals for myself to get better in various areas, getting less overwhelmed about bits that maybe I don't need to worry about so much. And being clear about my own values helps me be clearer about the kind of company I want us to run, and the team I want to work with. And I think it's something for everyone. I'd certainly encourage people to think about it. If you're in the sort of situation I was in maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where it's like, values, nah, nonsense, whatever. Like, I would certainly encourage, talk to anyone that you know that maybe has spent some time on that, and just get a sense of like whether it was helpful for them. Because for me, it really, really has helped in so many ways. And you may come away from that thinking, yeah, it's still a load of nonsense, but at least you might have a little bit more of a balanced perspective on it.
Yeah, but can I mention something?
Yeah.
I think you grew into the company that you're running today. You literally started your company like 17 years old or something like that, right? So for example, for me and Nikki was a completely different dynamic when we started Jigsaw, because I was 30 years old when I started Jigsaw, right? I've been through a lot of work experience and a lot of things. So when we sat down, when we started Jigsaw, we already immediately, because we wanted to build a workplace for us, where we can exercise our skills and work on cool things and, you know, take care of our well-being and so on. So immediately we sat down and thought, well, you know, there were things that we didn't like about the culture in the previous place. There were a lot of things that we loved about it, but there was also things that we didn't like. Okay, who are we? Like, what are our values, our personal beliefs and values? Let's list that, and out of that start making of what we want our company to look like and reflect. But that was a very mature thinking out of decades of working and experiencing. You grew into your company again. I think you started your company when you were 17. You've learned a lot along the way. So I wouldn't expect you at 17 years old to be like, okay, what are my personal values? I need to create the culture and the company values like this. And I agree. The company values and culture gets a bad rep today still. And the reason why is because, again,
it's because of WeWork and ping pong tables.
And because a lot of people just do it because of the corporate mantra in a sense, right? Oh, we need to align people, so let's make some rules around what our organization is all about. When in reality, that's not what it's supposed to be. And fundamentally, I think if you can make values that are relatable to individuals, because that is the biggest mistake that companies do. You sit down and say, okay, what are our company values? And you start doing these formal corporate-ish exercises on establishing a company's values. They're a formal organization level thinking values. An individual and the team will never relate to that, right? So if those values come from you as the founder, the individual that, or the C-level people that have certain beliefs and so on, then people can relate more with it, because like those are the values that you bring as an individual. And fundamentally, it's never going to be like, we're individuals with our own past, our own history, our own way of viewing things. Even the simplest written value will be interpreted slightly off, slightly different from an individual that has a completely different background. So you can't really expect that everyone reads that and feels inside fuzzy, exactly the same fuzz like you feel, right? The difference is that if you put these meaningless values, corporate values in place, and everyone has completely different understanding of what they mean because they don't relate with it, they interpret it in a different way, then you have this company that is just, you go to a department or to an individual and it means something. A different department, different team means something completely different. And if you're the founder of that company, you look at it as, I don't know this company. This is alien and foreign to me. This is not what I wanted to establish. And, so on. And that's because you're not doing it right, in a sense. And that's why setting company values gets such a bad street rep nowadays.
I think so. I think there's definitely a lot there. I think as well, I don't know if this is me sounding like a grumpy old man, but I think there's also an element of like trying to make sure you keep everyone happy. And I struggle with this a lot. I enjoy being liked. I want to be liked. I like to work with happy people. I like the team to be happy, and I like the team I'm happiest when the team is happy with the decisions and things I'm doing and making. But I think there is a bit of a harsh truth with setting culture and values, in that if you're setting them after the fact, like if you already have a team and you have a product and a company that's been running and you haven't done that work, and you start getting clearer on those values, there's a perfectly reasonable scenario there where some people don't agree, and don't agree with those values and aren't fitting with that culture. And that's, I think, where there's a difficult crossover point for you as a leader sometimes, where you got to figure out, well, do we sort of find a way to make these values fit everyone on the team and set the culture to encapsulate all of these factors? Or do we have people on the team or on the bus that really might be better off on a different bus? And that is really difficult because, sometimes people can be amazing individuals, but in much the way as a great sports team plays together as a team, you're not a family, you're not married to each other. I mean, maybe with your co-founder, yeah, you kind of are, but I think with a team, you've got to operate together as a team and be effective as a unit. And if you're a unit with 2 or 3 other people that are not on the same wavelength, you're not going to win as a team, and that's going to do a disservice to absolutely everyone. 100%. And I think that's a very difficult part. But I think from those experiences, I have gone through some of that stuff with running the company over the years, and I've certainly talked to other founders who've gone through it too. And I think the positive from any of that is that defining that culture, defining those values, getting clear with everyone about them and the direction of the business, it may at the time sometimes seem like those individuals who don't fit are losing out, but they need to find another bus, or you need to go help them find a bus that is going to be going the right direction for them. And ultimately, I think it's better and stronger and a more exciting future for everyone when you can find that out as early on as possible and do it in a constructive, supportive manner. Because you as a leader, you're not trying to raise a family within your team. You're trying to build a team that is successful.
I hate that term so much when it comes to teams and companies. Like we're a family here. It is such a, I don't know. It's very cringe and it's very outdated. We had this corporate world where, and not even corporate, in other type of teams as well, is like, oh, we're a family, we do everything. No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. And I think nowadays, 2023, that's even more preeminent with new generations coming into the workforce. And no one cares about your business at the way they, some people cared, and you come into workforce 10 years, 20 years ago, and maybe people put a lot more heart and soul into that specific unit. No one is like that anymore nowadays. And I think it's valuable, is valid, and I think we should embrace a transition where we're not a family anymore, right? But we bring together people that have at least close to the same values. Because again, even that, you can't have cookie cutter individuals coming in, because everyone comes from different background, different experience. Diversity nowadays is really important in organizations.
Absolutely, yeah.
And people will bring their own values, right? They, as long as they have the same, they're driven by the same motivations, passions, and they share your values and they can resonate with it, they'll add to it.
Yeah.
They'll amplify, they'll add to it. And as an organization, if you don't over time morph constantly because of the people that come in and contribute, then, big question mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also comes down into defining purpose and values and goals as an organization, because if you have like a list of like 200 values, then you're always going to find people that don't fit that, and you're always going to struggle to find people that match all of those, and you're probably going to shut yourself off from people that have other very valid values. But like deciding what is really most important to your business, and maybe it's like one value or two, and you've got to be open to those diverse. It's like finding a way to be open to like diverse ideas and ways of thinking, but somehow being aligned on the really, like, I guess a thing I've struggled with throughout the history of being in the world of startups is when you're in a corporate. At least I've never worked in a corporate, but I know a lot of people that have, and I have a partner who works in a much bigger company. Most things don't get questioned. Like, you can't question the motto of the company. You can't question the CEO of the company, because it's a 10,000 person company, and the values are all set in stone. And you, who is like 8 rungs down from leadership, you just get on, but you question the stuff within your team. Whereas when you're in a startup, because you're like all around one table or like on one Zoom call together, everything can get questioned.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about alignment and a team that is together, people can come from any background, like so many different diverse sort of upbringings, lifestyles, be anywhere in the world, whatever. But like, the thing that matters is the really important stuff people agree on and align on. And if there's disagreement around those fundamental things, that's where the mess comes from. And if people disagree on like something fundamental, like, our mission statement is this, or our goal over the next 2 years is to unbundle our products and to go on this strategy, and someone's against that, maybe the first occasion, like, you're, as a leader, I think it's definitely a duty to understand those concerns and hear them out and see if they're valid. But it's like, there's a saying, I think, at Amazon, which is like, disagree and commit. Like, people that can still commit and give 100% to something, even though they maybe have some disagreement on it, because you've got to build a team and a unit that cares about the greater good for the team rather than your individual goals. And you can't build something of meaningful change and do something great together if you've got individuals that want to win on every single thing and are going to disagree on every single thing. So,
and it's not just, so that's very key, because it's accountability towards the team on every single individual in the team, because that's the only way we can be inclusive, right? If we can put ourselves in others' shoes and thinking, and be respectful and mindful of everyone else's thinking, and do give in to some of our principles, or like these very specific ideologies or ideas in general, towards the greater good of what the team is achieving and where things are heading, and making sure that doing that in a safer and respectful way. Yes, individuals' ideas, thoughts are extremely valuable and valid and valued. But when you as an individual, either be it founder, because founders and CEOs are probably the most guilty of this. Hippos, highest paid person in the room, with this and that, because you feel like you have the responsibility and so on. But it happens in individuals in the team as well. If you cannot give in your bias for the greater good of the team, then that's a problem there. And I think that has been the biggest for me in my experience of working with teams, managing teams, nurturing, mentoring, and so on. individuals that won't give in and fall into this extremely toxic attitude and way of being, and trying to get their own agenda acknowledge one and adopt it, and that is very dangerous and very toxic for a team in general. So I think as long as we're mindful and respectful, and we can collaborate and give in and take and give and take, and we have that kind of balance, I think that's the best approach. Because again, we do all have different backgrounds, and it's hard. It's hard even when you have like it's hard for me to navigate some situations in Jigsaw when we're like 12 of us. Right?
Yeah.
I can imagine bigger
Yeah.
teams with more backgrounds and so on.
Yeah. You have to, I mean, you have to pick your battles in life, don't you? And I certainly find this as you said there, when you're a founder or in a more senior position, I think it's often so important to be so considerate of your own voice and the weight it carries. And I've been told that by many team members over the years that, often I may have an opinion, but I try very hard to reserve it until after most of the rest of the team have been speaking, or to to hold back some of my thoughts and opinions sometimes, because whether you like it or not, if you're a leader or a founder or a manager, your voice is gonna carry more weight than you maybe think it does, and that can be for such a variety of reasons. But even with the best of intentions, you've got to be conscious that what you say, maybe people have got various reasons not to disagree with it, and you may well be wrong. And if it's me, then there's a very high chance I'm going to be wrong. But I think that's about fostering the right environment as a team. And I think this is another area, not to go too deep on it, but I think about this a lot as someone who loves building things and creating things, but also someone who is responsible for a team where I think I in the early days underestimated the opportunity and the power and the impact that a team can have versus an individual. And to think about, it's sometimes the shortcut is you do the thing, you go implement that thing in Photoshop or build that thing on the site. But like, yes, that's quicker today, but why the hell have you got a team if you are going to go and do that? And that's a constant back and forth dilemma I have on a very frequent basis, where you have a choice when you can build things, and whether you're an engineer or a designer or just a very hands-on person, often the sort of person that starts a 1 or 2 person company and grows into having a bigger team, you often can do things yourself, and you can often do it faster than other people. But then you've got to remember that you have a team for all the reasons of having greater impact, and you hired those people for very good reasons. So finding ways you can get out of their way, finding ways that you put infrastructure in place to help the team execute better, and knowing full well that maybe today it's going to take longer, but in a week's time or in a month's time, they're going to be able to do that themselves. That's not only going to be a more powerful thing for the company because you've got more people that are empowered, it'll become a more powerful thing for you as an individual because you're not going to be that dependency anymore. And it's an incredibly impactful thing for the individuals on the team because they are building up their skill set and their knowledge that otherwise they wouldn't. And it blows my mind when I talk to people on the team, whether they're full-time or freelancers, that in so many companies, people don't get given those opportunities, and people see it often, the right people see it as opportunities to take on that extra task or to do that task themselves. And in so many companies, they're either not given the trust, or they're in such a tightly constrained box with their role that doing that thing is considered beyond their remit and not part of their responsibility. And I think part of building a really strong, robust team that works together, that can be as autonomous as possible, is to try as hard as you can as a creator or a builder type person to let go of some of that and let people make some mistakes, let people have some failures, but to remember in the long run, like, the point of having a team is to be stronger, more impactful than one individual. And I increasingly on this journey, that's been one of the things that I get quite addicted to, seeing the team perform great, not individuals making cool stuff, but a team making cool stuff. And that has far more leverage and long-lasting consequences, I think.
Yeah. I think we need, as leaders, we need to be the enablers, not the guiding star. I've started in the past, I used to be like, yeah, as a leader, you have to be the guiding star. I started seeing the downside of that metaphor, in a sense.
Yeah.
Because it can go both ways, right? The guiding star can show you the way, but also guiding star can show you, light up and show you the way, which is not always the right approach. And talking about this, and being an enabler is way, from my perspective, way better of a seat to have as a leader. And I agree. Like, I do this. I nowadays practice the same thing. I sit back in a meeting, let the team vocalize and vent and basically come up with solutions, talk, brainstorm, and so on. I'll be in the background, just contributing when the team needs me to contribute. More often than not. And one of the things that surprised me as well is when I do that, a lot of the thoughts that I have while the conversation is unfolding, a lot of the questions and the buts get answered by me not even asking that question or challenging. It just naturally from the conversation, I'm like, oh, this person just answered what my fear was. Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So there's a big benefit as you as the hippo, in a sense, in the room to just kind of like take the back seat and let the team unfold. And it's a lot more happiness and determination and passion in the team if they're empowered and they feel like they're contributing versus being told what to do and say and work with and so on.
Yeah.
Completely agree. Right. I'm going to shift gears a bit and ask you one last question before I hand it over. If you want to ask me anything from my journey or anything like that. You've been doing this for a long time. You started this business when you're 17? When you started hacking and doing stuff?
It was more like, I don't know, 15 or so when we started like building some stuff together. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've been evolving that hacking into a business, into the analytics business, and evolving and growing over what's now almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Why not sell? Why not just say that enough, this is enough. Not necessarily enough, but why not either sell and just go and live happy, retire or something, or do some passion projects, with a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Or why not exit, sell, get acquired, and then start something fresh? Have you ever thought about this?
Yeah, I appreciate the very direct question, to be honest, Biro, because a lot of people are often afraid to ask these kinds of things. And
the reason why, sorry to interrupt, the reason why I'm asking, because I'm fascinated about this. I've always been like a serial entrepreneur. I've always had this mindset of, maximum 5 years, and then I can't, I need something fresh. And also the company would probably reach a point where I don't feel like I'm needed. So I would hand over. And I'm always fascinated. I've met a couple of people that have been having businesses for 20 years. And I'm like trying to figure out what makes you tick and keeps
Why?
you in this?
Why?
Why are you doing this?
I think it's a fantastic question, and it absolutely is something I've pondered many times. So for a start, like it's not just me. I have a co-founder, and you know, there's two of us that essentially have that make those decisions. We have been approached to be acquired on multiple occasions in the past. Some very serious acquisitions that felt like an episode of Silicon Valley, and you know, it's nice to be wined and dined every now and again. I think there's a few things, and it kind of comes back to some of the stuff we talked about earlier around that definition of success. And you know, I think for me, I love what we're doing right now. I love the team I work with. I love the space we're operating in. I love the impact we're having on the climate side more than ever. Like who knew that would be what we'd be doing in 2023. I like my role within the team, and essentially, like you know, from my perspective, I've always been trying to build a company that is a company I enjoy working at, and that other people hopefully enjoy working out with me. And I kind of feel that yes, we could sell up, but I kind of think, you know, you sell up and then what would we want to do? We'd probably want to build more things, and we would probably want to build a nice team again. And you know, there's a lot of things we'd like to do that are basically exactly what we're doing right now. And so I think also, yes, it's easy to sort of look at, like, technically we started this company when we were at school, but that very much oversimplifies the actual journey we've been on. And I look over that journey, and it's essentially felt like running 5-6 different businesses over those years. It's never stayed the same for very long. You know, at school it was very different, like trying to cram it in when you're meant to be doing homework and things like that. And after school, trying to land on our feet and starting to work in an office for the first time and doing it full time, and speaking to investors and things like that for the first time, and then on that journey of building out more of a platform and other products and meeting different types of customers. And then really the last year has felt very different again with the work we've been doing on EcoSend, and that's truly felt like a different company. So in between all of that, sure, we could have like maybe drawn a line and done some paperwork and said that's closed off and that started. But I love the unit we have and what we're building, and I love that we, you know, almost to an unhealthy level, GoSquared is like my baby. Or you know, and I think JT, my co-founder, would say exactly the same thing. It's like, although we're not married, but like, you know, we've had this as part of our like DNA for so long. And I think as a team as well, it's like we're not diametrically opposed to the idea of selling the business, but I think it would have to be a very sort of special acquisition or something to make us want to not do this. Yeah, so I think we love the ride at the moment. We love the journey, and to me that's a pretty critical thing, because if we were doing this and we hated it every day and we just kept on doing it, then that would be a problem, because yeah, you're desperate for an exit then. But I think that's also a big part of, you know, a lot of startup culture these days. It's like you do it for a few years, you find your exit, or you go bust, and then you go again. And those are the goals, and you're not gonna like it for those years because you're gonna be hustling like mad and giving it everything, and you won't see your family at all. Like it's more like a marathon than a sprint, as a horribly overused cliche. But having done a bit of long distance running, like you don't focus so much on each meter and how fast each kilometer is. You focus on, can you run for a really long period of time, and can you get over that finish line at the end? And I think I feel that with GoSquared, it is this sort of marathon that we're running, and running a marathon that you actually enjoy running is possible and feasible. and I think the exciting thing is that by continuing to run, we've found this whole new lease of life that who knows if that would have come about if we hadn't kept on going and going and going, working through the pain and working through the tough points. And to see that what we are doing now with EcoSend is so much more than just a SaaS business, but it is a movement and driving awareness of such a big topic. It's like I find that incredibly fulfilling, and yeah, I'm just glad we're doing that. But you know, never say never, but yeah, I think right now, like, just an exit and acquisition is not top of mind for any of us.
Okay, makes sense. Do have a follow-up question, but we'll probably keep it for another time because my lights are telling us that
talking about running a marathon. We're getting to the end.
Yeah, we need to close off. So I usually there's really good conversation. I have so many other questions, but I've always tried to keep this podcast under 2 hours and not make it like a 3 hours podcast and stuff. I usually end with a ceremony with 3 questions, part of that ceremony for you. First question being, what's a quote that you live by?
Gosh, there's too many, and I'm worried I'm going to come up with one that's not good enough.
This show is not about good enough. This show is about just being yourself.
When I was a kid, I had like 3 quotes on my wall, and the one that stands out just because you asked me and it's really hot and it's the end of the day, but one of those quotes was, the only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. And that has often stuck with me.
Wait, say that again?
The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary.
Right. Okay.
So there was you got to work hard for your success.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That's a funny one as well, to be honest. Second one was a book that changed your life or had a significant impact in your life, either personal life or professional life, whatever you want to highlight.
One of the books I have been getting a tremendous amount of value from is, there's a book called Principles by Ray Dalio, and he essentially, I guess, sum him up as an investor, very successful man in the world of investment and finance. But he put together a whole book. Half of it's about his life story, but the other half is sort of broken down into his personal and work life principles that he's built over his whole life and career. And I've taken a hell of a lot of value from that. A lot of profound wisdom about your outlook on life, how to deal with other people, difficult scenarios, how to build a company of people that might be from very diverse backgrounds, but get them to pull together as a team. Principles has been a phenomenally good and valuable resource for me.
Principles, and who's it by again?
Ray Dalio.
Ray Dalio. Okay, I'll need to look that up.
Yeah.
And then the last question, I promise is the last one, okay? Because both of our lights are now off. So what is a habit that you advocate for? A good habit. Good. Not anyhow.
Here's my list of all the bad habits. Habits, I mean, there's another book that I've gotten a lot of value from. The Atomic Habits from James Clear is another very valuable book I read. But over the course of the last couple of years, as I got clear on my values, I have tried to turn those into habits. And another book that another area of my life where I've learned a lot about is schedule and having a good schedule. I read a book there was a very cheesy book called Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life, I believe. But it was all about the Ayurvedic schedule, and essentially talks about waking up, going to sleep, eating, living really in the sort of timings and phases of nature. And this goes back thousands of years, but I've tried to form many, many habits around that, around waking up earlier, going to bed a little bit earlier,